Perfect. Thank you, Christian.
Maybe like if people are gonna join now, maybe you want to mute Max, or I don't know.
Okay.
Max, are you also gonna ask people to drop their LinkedIn or introductions in the chat? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, um, I didn't say drop your LinkedIn, but I can say it if you want. So
N- No, it's a choice. Do you want us to then also do it so that people follow
yeah,
our
that
example?
would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Blockchain for Food Learn All About It session. We're delighted that you are here with us. I'm Max, the marketing responsible for Open Food Chain, and I will be moderating the session with the help of Marika. It would be great if you could introduce yourselves in the chat, dropping your LinkedIn profiles or explaining what you do. And of course, if you have any questions about blockchain, how it is applied in agri-food, about our project or so, it is the ideal place to solve these doubts. I will be reading the chat, so we will make sure that all the doubts you may have are solved, of course. With that said, I'll explain a little bit of the dynamics of the session. Marika, the CEO and founder of Open Food Chain, will make a 20-minute presentation in which she will explain the project, Open Food Chain, what do we do, etc. And from there, we will open a small consulting room in which Marika will answer any questions that you may have about OFC, but also any topic related to blockchain for agri-food. Before the presentation starts, I highly recommend that you can join our Telegram group. Patricia will send the link in the chat. And yeah, you can also contact us via my email, which is max@openfoodchain.com, or sending us a message in any LinkedIn profile that we have as workers of Open Food Chain. With that said, I'm going to give the floor to Marika to start the presentation. So thank you very much, and I hope that you can enjoy this session.
All right. Okay, nice to see you all here. Welcome. My name is then Marika. I'm the founder of Open Food Chain, and this session will explain the following. We're going to have a very brief introduction on the why, the how, and the what, Open Food Chain, and why blockchain, and how blockchain, and what blockchain. We have a very short discussion on the investment opportunity in Open Food Chain, and then we open it to the questions. Now, as we learned over the past years, we have to understand the why. And the opportunity that we see here is really this, you in a retail shop somewhere buying your food, where you have actually no idea what you're seeing. It's difficult to make a choice. It's difficult to know what you're buying. So first of all, the why you want to have blockchain in your food system is to get information on the products that you buy and get reliable information. The second reason, I don't know how many of you, it would be great if you could say that in the chat, are actually working in the agri-food business. I know a few of you are. This is sort of the inside of a supply chain where there's lots of paperwork, lots of administration that needs doing, and a lot to digitize. So the second why is really supply chain efficiency. So in short, Open Food Chain builds product passports that gives reliable ESG proofs, a term that you hear a lot these days, which stands for environmental, social, and governance themes or issues. To everybody, so not only to consumers, but also to B2B. Also within the supply chain, there is it really helps to exchange information on sustainability issues, on claims that you make on a product. And as we said, it is really the efficiency to business that is the big driver for blockchain adoption in supply chain. The aim of Open Food Chain is to onboard 10% of the entire agri-food industry. It's an 11 trillion industry globally. By doing that, what we do basically is to scale good food. So instead of regulating and punishing fraudulent food or not necessarily good food, we're gonna launch and enhance the production and the visibility and the business models of good food. So that is all on the why. Now on the solution. Before we go to the technology and how we operate it, there's two real use cases, and one of them is Chef Chain. And if you go, so Chef Chain is one of the implementations that we developed for chefs who actually today have very difficult times in order to find out what they have on their kitchen table. So this blockchain burger shows how chefs can then click on ingredients, understand the producer who delivered the ingredients, have the nutrient information, but also food miles and CO2 emissions, for example. And this is for all 9 ingredients, so for the tomatoes, for the mayonnaise, etc. So that's one live implementation of Open Food Chain. The second one is Juicy Chain. And Juicy Chain is a bottle where you have 2 identifiers of that particular bottle. If you then enter those, scan the QR code, enter these codes, then you go to this Juicy Chain passport, where you can see that in this case, the apples are produced in Poland, they're bottled in Germany. And what is new and what is different, it's a more complex supply chain than the blockchain burger, where there's just 1 producer per ingredient. And here you have a longer supply chain with producers, with bottlers, and with retailers. And every actor in the supply chain uploads their information themselves. And this is something that is very unique to a decentralized data system, that everybody is responsible for the quality of their own data. So each data that you can see in sort of the product passport as it builds up is added by each individual company, and that adds up to the total and complete product passport. Now, Juicy Chain currently is a Juicy Chain Foundation. You can find that also in the chat, the link to the Juicy Chain website. It is a foundation is formed by Refresco and Eckes Granini, 2 competitors who work in the juice industry, and they jointly initiated this blockchain implementation. Now, for everybody else who wants to join, they can join on their own account with something that we call self-onboarding, or they can get a membership with the Open Food Chain Foundation. And that's only for 10,000 euros a month. And then you can endlessly track and trace your juice volumes. Now, what happens in both these examples is that we go from a very complex, invisible supply chain where you can only look 1 step back, 1 step forward, and I'm sure everybody in food recognizes this, to an infrastructure where everybody publishes their data to an open, accessible infrastructure, and everybody can see where the batch is, what quality information goes with that batch, and edit and verify that information publicly and individually. Now, so those were the 2 examples. What is also important to understand is how we organize this, and we call this our governance principles. On one hand, we have the Open Food Chain Foundation. I'll tell you in a second who's in the board and the advisory board. And on the other hand, we have the industry implementations. Now, the example you saw was Juicy Chain. There is Chef Chain with the blockchain burger. And this year we kicked off in 3 other industries: olive oil, fish, and cacao. The aim is to onboard 30 supply chains in total. We onboard another 5 next year, and then we'll have a pace of 10 industries per year. In the board, next to myself, we have Rick Bornstein, which is a venture capitalist based between the US and Israel. We have Kadan, who is the CTO of Komodo, which is our key technology stack. Howard Yana Shapiro, who is the former Chief Agriculture Officer of Mars Company. You might know Mars from the Mars bars, the chocolate bars, but they're actually very big in pet food and agriculture and in general. Angelique Oplaat was a former CIO at Rabobank. Today, she's the COO of NatWest, which is a bank based in the UK. And Peter van Osch, who is a serial entrepreneur and is focused now on scaling impact. Now, in the advisory board, we have the CPO of Refresco, Julian Lampietti from the World Bank, Sucker from IBM Food Trust, and Hugo Beerns, who was a former Ahold Delhaize employee, and he's still, we're in the discussion, but we think we hope he'll join. And that is the people behind the Open Food Chain. Now, the technology, and again, I'm gonna just briefly highlight things because we wanna really enhance your room for questions and dive deeper into the issues that you find interesting. So next to the governance, we innovate on technology. And there's two sides of our blockchain. So on one hand, we have the industry chains. So that's Juicy Chain, Chef Chain, Olive Chain. They have a native token that actually has no value. It runs in these industry chains. Now, we also have an open food chain token, and that's pegged 1-to-1. And that runs in the entire open food chain ecosystem. So Open Food Chain is an interoperable infrastructure. We will launch it on Ethereum, on the Binance chain, and on any other important dominant blockchain ecosystem that will evolve in the next couple of years. And on the industry chain, what is really important, that the only thing we do, it's a pretty boring technology. And what we do is we just make information immutable and verifiable. That's the key essence. And you see on the bottom of this slide a few of the technical parts of those industry chains, and we can discuss more on that if there's any interest in it. Now, how is this different to competitors? We actually started to develop this in 2019. We have been in the blockchain for food domain since 2016. And we started to develop Open Food Chain because we lacked an interoperability in the existing solutions. And we definitely lacked an understanding of how agriculture works and how supply chains work and how farms work. And a third component that was a real trigger for us to start Open Food Chain is the cost structure. So we have no transaction costs for the agri-food industry, so they can track and trace endless volumes without affecting the bill. So there's just this annual fee of 10,000 euros to participate, and that's all, and that's it. And it doesn't matter how many volumes, because it doesn't affect actually the operational costs so much. And this is something that we think is a real winning deal for agri-food, because you have a lot of volumes, you have many players, and you want technology that is highly scalable. The question then is, so what is the business model if you don't get your revenue from transaction costs? How do you get your revenue? We get that from the maintenance of the industry chains, which is paid for by the industry leaders, and we get that from these memberships. Those two components are what you call a SaaS model, a software as a service business model, and that is the core of the Open Food Chain business model. Now, last year we actually noticed that we're very attractive for government funding, because in the end we do establish a better food system. And we actually have about 30% of our total income comes from public funding. So Open Food Chain has those two income streams. Now, the investment offer, we have a token that we're launching next year. What you see here is a division or distribution of the 200 million tokens that we have in Open Food Chain. A large chunk of that is reserved for technical development, that's 40%, and 30%, 13, is emitted in an investment round, or actually 3 investment rounds. So we started the seed round, we completed the seed round earlier this year, and we are currently in the private round. The token price currently is 12 cents, and we are open for investments for people that want to join this. And this is important to state that we look for strategic investors. We don't look for finance. We look for partners that add value to the Open Food Chain ecosystem and that can really drive this forwards. Next to that is, it's important to understand that we do not do any equity investments. We believe in the future of Web3. We believe in the strength of a token in an agri-food ecosystem, and investing and holding those tokens as parts of, as basically the new type of equity. So we don't do any equity investments. It's just, and it is only token investments. If you're interested, do get in touch. We'll drop some contact details in the chat. We are based in Amsterdam at Startup Village at Science Park. We do have great coffee, so we do welcome you here physically. But otherwise, let's actually open the floor for discussions. I know it was quite a high pace, but we just want to signpost you to the topics that we have on the table. We can also talk about blockchain for food in general, about Hyperledger, about other solutions. But the open food chain is the technology that we have here and that we have here for you to use. Something that I didn't mention is that we do develop this open source. And again, this is a very distinctive feature to the existing blockchains that we have and definitely that are operational in food. So, big sites, 15 minutes later only. Let's open the floor and let's see if there are any questions or if you need any clarification on one of the topics.
Hello there, my name's Jonathan Hodes. I have a question. I want to ask, how can blockchain reduce food waste?
So, if you go to this picture, in this reality, it's very impossible to have any good clue on where produce is and where produce goes. If you have a connected data infrastructure that is accurate and that is real-time, you have much better insight into where volumes go and where waste actually exists. And then focus on those points where you see volumes piling up or losses getting in your data infrastructure. So by data becoming connected, it's a very good strength to get insight into weight loss, first of all, and reduce the loss where it's happening.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, so we have other questions which were made this last week on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on direct messages. But I see one question here in the chat made by Hussam. Hello, Hussam. Good afternoon. He said, "Good presentation. Can you kindly expand on what farmer-friendly means in the context of OFC offering?"
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for the question. Yes, so what farmer-friendly means in the case of Juicy Chain, for example, is that it has been agreed and settled in the Juicy Chain Foundation that for farmers it is free to join. Additionally, there is something that we call self-onboarding, and this is basically a manual that people can download and onboard themselves, so they won't need anybody else to onboard them, but they can do it themselves. And in cacao, currently we're kicking that off for Latin American cacao production. So this is in the Amazons, where the focus will be on developing a very lightweight node that farmers can run on their phone, on their mobile phones, and participate in a blockchain by only using their mobile device. So those are just a few examples. And the way how that works is that they would sort of enter the volumes, add some quality indications to that, maybe with the proof of some photos that can or cannot then be verified by an NGO that works in the fields. And by that way, you can really have credible claims that you can add to your physical produce, and that gives a higher price.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Perfect. Good to see you, Hussam. So we have some more questions. Again, if feel free to ask anything in the chat. I'm checking it every 2 minutes or so. But I also have some other questions from Twitter and LinkedIn. So one of them is why public blockchains are more suited to agri-food supply chains than permission blockchains?
Yeah, so public blockchain are permissionless blockchains, or that's actually it's public and it is permissionless. And that means that you can join and nobody has to give you or grant you access. So a lot of the blockchains out there, and I think that's even 99%, they are either permissioned or semi-permissioned. And that means that somebody has to let you in. Somebody has to decide whether or not you can join. And the strength of a public permissionless blockchain for food is that there's so many players, so it needs to be decentralized and it needs to be very open for everybody to join. So it becomes a much more transparent and fair system.
Okay, I see. Yeah, Dan asked if it was possible to receive the presentation.
Yeah,
so yeah,
sure.
we can share it, of course. Yeah, another question. So which are the focus industries for this upcoming 2023? Future plans? Do we have any big plans for this 2023? What are the short and medium term plans?
Yeah. So currently we are kicking off in 5 supply chains, and we'll add another 5 next year. And as some of you might know, the regulation in the EU, the European Union, is very much increasing on ESG reporting. So supply chains are being forced to report on accountability within their total supply chain. And so that means that the 5 industries that we will onboard additionally next year will come from areas where there's a need for this ESG reporting. And you can think of sectors like, for example, soya, palm oil, it's fruit and vegetables, those sort of industries.
Okay, cool. Now I see Emon Sahaba. Sorry for the pronunciation. He said for products like juice, there are multiple fruits and vegetables in the final product that is purchased by the consumer. Does the supply chain data link to a single bottle? If so, how does that data look like?
Yes. Yeah, so that was the case that we just showed on Juicy Chain. Let me just bring that back on screen. So you do indeed, this goes, so the hamburger, this is the example that we gave before. This is at batch level. And at Juicy Chain, it's a batch of bottles, and you can access that bottle by entering the unique ID of that particular bottle. And you do get to that particular bottle. But again, just to emphasize, that is at batch level. So the batch of bottles has the same quality traits and the same certificates.
I see here that Hussam also asked another question, which is that you mentioned Latin America. Can you kindly expand on other geographies that you serve? Are there any requirements, restrictions? Where does Africa fall on your radar?
Yes. Yeah, so for next year, we actually have some things emerging from India, and India and China alone have 60% of world's farm community. So we're focusing on India. We're definitely focusing on the US, as there's supply chains just move much quicker. In Europe, we tend to have a slow pace at change and adoption. And we are very interested to move to Africa. So if anyone has a good lead there or wants to have a discussion, yeah, fantastic, Hussam. We're very keen to move there.
Okay, so I've seen in the chat that some people is asking for the presentation, so we will share it to all of you. Patricia is on it, and I will be also checking the chat, so don't worry about that.
And also maybe for people to know, so there's the openfoodchain.com website, and on that website you see an investment deck and a white paper. And that white paper has a lot of detailed information on the why, how, and what. So that's also for people to go and assess.
So here you can see the white paper, the investment deck. We have checked also the presentation with live use cases like Chef Chain or Juicy Chain. I have 2 more questions here. One is, a pretty broad question. What are the main reasons to start a blockchain solution?
Yeah, the key reason is should be to reduce costs and get more efficiency. And related to that is that you do need to have a need for immutable data. If you don't start blockchain, right? You really need to have you need to have more data integrity and a complexity that is difficult to tackle with Web 2 technology. So blockchain is Web 3. Web 2 is everything before that, so from Facebook up till now. and that is not immutable. So you can solve a lot of traceability questions without blockchain, but if you need data integrity, you definitely need it. And if you need if you work in long, complex supply chains, you also need it, because that's where the peer-to-peer and decentralized power of blockchain can really make your life easier.
Cool. Perfect. Now I see that Chris Carroll said, I would love to talk about blockchain and smallholder farmers in Africa. So he sent his email. So yeah, we'll contact you.
Chris.
He said, yeah, we're working on blockchain linked to smallholders and restoration in Kenya and Cameroon. How do you fulfill integrity from the start, farmer?
Yeah, so key question. And I think Eastern Africa is a good example where a lot of donor public investment has been pumped into the development of farm apps. As a result, you have like a plethora of farm apps that I really think it's a challenge for farmers to understand what they should use in terms of tech, and how that and to what extent those apps and the technology is interoperable. So how we see it, that if you start an open public infrastructure, you can really enhance the interoperability of all those different technologies. And Eastern Africa is one of the most digitized farm communities. So the density of phones and using apps in farm life are much higher than in, for example, the Netherlands. It's something that not a lot of people realize, but it's a very digitized farm community. And if you, so how you can envision it is that the existing apps should communicate with an open public infrastructure, and then share certain information that is in those apps.
Okay, so I have, Amina just said something in the chat. I also see Helmer, so let's focus on the questions of the chat. So Helmer van Merendonk said, as a consumer, I would like to know if a product is really biological or has other important features.
Yes.
How do you fulfill integrity from the start farm?
From the start of farmer?
Yeah, from the start farmer.
Okay, yeah. So currently there's an increasing amount of fake food. For example, the example that we that is very well researched is that officially 1/3 of olive oil is not olive oil. It's some edible oil, but not olive oil. So that is where you definitely want to have some data integrity, and you want to know that if something is claimed to be organic, is organic. And the reason for that, or actually the opportunity, is that you have a system that is immutable and decentralized. So something like Open Food Chain can help to really prove that claim and verify that claim.
Okay, so I'm reading at the chat, 1 second, because I'm also checking the LinkedIn. So Amina Rasulova said, hello again. If I'm not wrong, blockchain for agri-food is generally used by individuals and companies from developed countries and implemented in lower income communities to tackle current problems. Also, it is not so possible to apply blockchain in countries with corruption. How is it possible to break the circle and make blockchain a part of everyday life?
Yeah, great question. I mean, if we had the answer, but I think we have partial answers to that. So first of all, you have to start blockchain with at least 2 parties. So you can't do it alone. You have to have at least 2 individuals or companies, ideally, to kick it off. And it is, because it's immutable, it is actually very powerful for areas where you do have corruption. In general, automation is something that you want if there's a lot of corruption, and definitely immutable automation, because then you know that nobody can change the rules of the game while you're at the game, right? So it is an open public infrastructure is very promising for areas where there is corruption. But there's also at the same time, of course, quite some resistance to adopt it. And the key, so after 5 years, what we learned is that you need to focus on the change makers, on the pioneers, those who are willing to stick out their neck, and those who are willing to be the innovator. So don't go for sort of a logical assessment of where it should start, but go for the energy, go for the person, go for the company where either there's a high urgency, or ideally there's a strong vision on and ability to act. That's really what you need.
Okay, so next question is from Damian Taylor, a Sunderland fan. So he asked, is Open Food Chain focused on interoperability with other blockchains?
Yes, very much. Yeah, so we are hyper interoperable. We're testing this now we're going to test this with Cargo Ledger, who is Hjalmar in the call here. And we are also going to test this with actually with all blockchains that will come. But Kakao is a good example because there's a lot happening in Kakao already. And we are we're going to showcase interoperability in Q1 of next year, very much in Kakao.
Okay, so now we have Maurizio in the chat too, Maurizio Garzelli. And he asks, in a permissionless system, how do you monetize? I mean, you would need to make sure that the right company puts the data on the blockchain because they have an active membership. But then, is this not permission?
The membership.
If you can clarify, Maurizio, yeah, he said yes, the membership.
Okay, yeah. So no, because there is what we said is the self-onboarding, so people can onboard themselves. So the membership is for Open Food Chain Foundation to help companies onboard or do it for them, and everybody can onboard themselves with a self-onboarding manual. So no, it's not. It's very permissionless. The reality is that most companies, they have highly understaffed IT departments, and they actually need other companies to do it. Which also is the reason why we chose for a 100% open source development strategy, because we realized we need a very big development community to actually bring food into Web3 and digitize food further and definitely faster.
Okay, so now I'm also checking the questions from other socials. And so, well, now we have Maurizio. He has another question. So he said, how do you avoid having duplicate or fake accounts?
Yeah, a great question. I don't know. I see that Bart is in this call as well. I don't know, Bart, if you want to take the question, how do we avoid fake accounts?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, basically, if you self-onboard, you are getting a serious cost upon yourself, right? And that is traditionally the way to mitigate this in the blockchain space. So you put skin in the game, and that you cannot do endless because your sources are limited. And it's also really till a huge level of people entering the blockchain, it doesn't really affect the other ones, right? Because everybody is managing its own data and its own transactions on that blockchain. So it's not like that it's a problem for others, as long as it's not millions of nodes entering the network. But that I won't see that happening because it will cost a lot of money.
Okay, we have another question that has been frequent, which is, why did you choose to develop open source?
Yes. So that is, there's a few reasons. We actually have an open source strategy document that we will have soon on the website. But the first reason is actually it improves the quality of the code. So as you do in an open kitchen where people can look at what you're doing, the quality of the code improves. A second reason is really because of the sustainability of the code. So if anything happens to us, we won't be there. People can continue and will continue. And it really allows a faster growth. So we think we very much see the future as an open source future. We need to go faster in digitizing the food system, and we need all hands on deck.
Okay, I've been asked to stop presenting to make it, 1 second. If you can, put it. Okay, perfect. So we're now in the final part of the session. I have another question here that says, I don't know if you already answered this question, kind of, but it says, how does Open Food Chain work with farm management systems or other systems that the supply chain already has in place?
Exactly. Great question. Thank you for that question. So actually, that was the slide that we just clicked away. So there is a lot of systems in agri-food, and Open Food Chain talks to these systems. So there is a connection, ideally automatic, between a farm management system or an enterprise resource planning system that communicates to the blockchain. And either they push like a reference. So basically in blockchain terms, that's often visualized with the fingerprint, where you say, well, I claim that this is the truth. And the data resides on your own system, or you actually push the system to the blockchain and people can read the data directly. Another thing that is not clear to everybody is that in an open public infrastructure, you can very well hide and protect data. So it doesn't mean that your data is open. It means that the infrastructure is open and the access is open, but the data can be very well protected. And for example, in the case of a food safety concern, you can unlock the information and give a food safety entity of government access. But so it definitely works with the existing data systems. And that's one of our design principles, is that we keep the blockchain technology very simple, and we just build an infrastructure to which companies can push their existing data. So we make existing data much more valuable and visible and verifiable.
Okay, so now, yeah, again, if you have any other questions, now we have the last two questions. So yeah, if you have any other doubt, please feel free to talk in the chat or sending a message or anywhere. So we have this question that says, so the business model, because we've talked about Chef Chain, Juicy Chain, but the business model, which doesn't have transaction costs.
Yes.
Why don't we have transaction costs? This is a question that I received.
Yeah. So we actually know, we saw how blockchain implementations didn't get beyond their pilot phase because of a cost structure that has a very strong transaction cost component. It creates a dependency on tech developments that happen, for example, in the Ethereum ecosystem. So if their prices go up, your transaction costs go up. So we wanted to have zero transaction costs to really give a good incentives for food companies to go and track and trace everything. And you don't need a transaction fee for the security of the system. We solved that in another way. So it was a very explicit choice, and actually, I would say, adventure to find a way, an architecture that allows zero transaction costs. And yeah, if you look at that from a software perspective, that's really flipping the business model. So rather than saying that we give you a feature with a high margin on a low number of transactions, we say we give you a very low margin on a whole lot of transactions.
Okay, then the final question, which is a pretty important one, it says, what are the next steps for Open Food Chain? That's the last question that I have.
Yeah. So the next steps are really to complete the token sale, so to complete our investment round, and kick off in 5 additional supply chains next year, and then we'll have 10 in total. And again, the core focus, I don't know whom of you know about this this body of research, where if you have 10% adoption, that is enough to get a wheel spinning. So we focus on 10% of the agri-food industry, and with these 30 supply chains, we'll have 10%. So that is our core focus. So first, close the private round, continue the implementation of Open Food Chain. Those are 2 different activities. With the investment round, we'll perfectionize the SaaS model and make it hyper scalable. Technically, it already is, but we of course need to build a good open source organization around that, and that's where we need the investment for. And then it is designed to be unstoppable.
Okay, so we have a last question now because Emon Sahaba asked another question in the chat. So the question is, does OFC track ESG data?
Yes, yeah. So the example that we gave earlier on the Juicy Chain, so ESG, for those who don't know, stands for environmental, social, and governance topics. And it's the new sustainability term, right? So we used to call that sustainability, and now we call it ESG. And ESG risks are often covered by certificates, so a sustainability certificate. And we track and trace those certificates and make them directly available. So yes, Juicy Chain in many perspectives is like a reporting tool for ESG compliance.
Okay, so Emon, I hope that this, the question now is answered. And yeah, so now it's 20 minutes till 3, but I don't have any other question left. So if you have any other doubt, we can wait for a minute or so. But if not, we will conclude the session. Yeah, it was a really a big success that we had more than 30 people in the majority of the session. So thank you very much for joining. Feel free also to join our Telegram, our socials, of course. If you want to tell me that I'm a really bad presenter, you can send an email to me. No. But in general, thank you very much for coming. And yeah, we can keep in touch in the socials and see you soon. And of course, have a really great Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Merry Christmas. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, happy holidays.
Yeah, sure.
Happy holidays.
Yes. Bye,
Thank
Stan.
you. Thank you.
Thank
Merry
you,
Christmas.
guys.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Good day. Bye.
Bye
Thank you so
bye.
much.
Bye bye.
Thank you for your
Bye.
attention.